我相信大部分嘅香港人都曾經乘坐過國泰航空或者使用過香港機場。好多人會認為香港之所以成為一個國際航空樞紐，係好自然地因為我哋嘅地理位置。但係其實我哋嘅航空業發展，除咗反映咗香港人嘅努力同埋企業精神之外，亦都深深受到二次大戰之後國際形勢嘅改變、美國嘅崛起，以至中國嘅改革開放所影響。今堂我哋嚟到香港大學，請對呢個問題素有研究嘅王迪安教授為我哋分享佢對航空歷史嘅研究。
As we fly around the world in 2024, it's tough to imagine a world without commercial aviation and a world without Hong Kong being an important nexus. But as we look at the history of the development of this industry, the development of Hong Kong into a nexus was certainly not a preordained outcome. What motivated me to look at this project, to study this development, was precisely to understand globalization and global network in the making and how Hong Kong weaved itself onto this global network. Commercial aviation was certainly a brand new industry, and it was challenging many of the existing players in what went before it, in particular maritime transportation. So it's not surprising that when we look at the key players in this industry, the state certainly played a very pivotal role alongside many commercial enterprises, many of them in shipping. And that's why when we look at Hong Kong, it's no big surprise that Swire was one of the key players behind Cathay Pacific. There was a lot of vested interest, shipping and others, who would like to steer the development of commercial aviation to their own advantage. So we need to situate our understanding of who shaped the industry in that particular context, and also to understand what had to go into this industry for it to flourish, in particular investment. And I mean investment not just in planes, but also infrastructure. So who are the commercial players trying to get to Hong Kong? From the other side of the Pacific, you have Pan American Airways. Who are they meeting up with here in Hong Kong? All the European carriers. In particular, from the UK, you have Imperial Airways, the predecessor to British Airways. And combining with them was also the traffic that was funneled through Hong Kong from mainland China. And for that, Pan American Airways had a joint venture in a company called China National Aviation Corporation, CNAC. Now, what exactly did they need to carry through Hong Kong, to Hong Kong, from Hong Kong? In this day and age, we tend to think of ourselves, the passengers, as being the most important aspect. Not quite so. If you look at the first flight landing in Hong Kong on March 24th, 1936, that was Imperial Airways Dorado, arriving from Penang. It carried 47 kilograms of mail and a single passenger. So in the Imperial network, as well as on the route system of all these other carriers, just as important as the passenger traffic was information flow and cargo. In this case, information flow in the example of mail. That Imperial Airways that landed its first plane in Hong Kong only made the city all the more attractive to the other players. Who was next to arrive in Hong Kong? Not quite a Pan American. There was still a lot of negotiation with the British authorities. It was CNAC's plane arriving in November 1936. What are all these planes? They were called Clippers. I mean, if you look at a picture of Dorado, it's just a plane with wheels landing in the airport. But Clippers were more like flying boats, and we'll see that in this picture. You see it even more clearly with Pan American's Hong Kong Clipper arriving in Hong Kong. Docked in Hong Kong. We call it landing, but it's not quite. It, to me, is more like a hydrofoil boat that we take now between Hong Kong and Macau. Why is it important for us to think about that? It reminds me yet again that this industry was built on the roots, on the foundation of maritime traffic. As a matter of fact, if we look at other languages, what do we call an airport? English, we call it an airport. Chinese, we call it 飛機場. But in Japanese, we call it kuko Hongkong. It's a port in the skies. And as we think back at what we call an airport, is a port in the air as well. So the continuation of that is quite important as we think of the development of commercial aviation, not just as a single phenomenon, but a continuation of a logistics industry. So what did they connect with all these routes for the different airlines? Well, for British Airways, that is what's called the trunk routes. Basically a line that goes from London, the metropole, to all the locations on its map, on the British imperial map, that it considered to be strategically and commercially important. If you look at this map that I'm going to show you here, you'll see that Hong Kong is somewhat off to the side. An afterthought? Not quite. If you were to think of Hong Kong's geopolitical position, it is precisely a vector that points to north to China that made it appealing to British Airways and all the airlines that were eager to get into Hong Kong. So what's the end game? What's the outcome that everyone desired? It was the ability to circumnavigate the entire world, Hong Kong being an important part, just as important as London, San Francisco, and New York. But then it's all constructed in a certain geopolitical system. In this case, the rising Americans needed to meet up with the old imperial powers stemming from Europe. And on top of that, you have the tremendous market, the traffic coming from China. This is precisely the situation that we found ourselves in right before World War II. As we see in the next segment, World War II is going to change the game quite fundamentally, shifting powers among the various players, and then in the process, shaping Hong Kong's industry and also the way the infrastructure would develop.